Hello, everybody. So, I'm really very happy to have three very important people on our podcast today. And this podcast is being recorded for Project Nomad, a wonderful venture which explores various aspects of education in India. So, today we have the creators of Project Nomad. We have Saurav Datta, Abhilasha Kulkarni, and Harshit Tathed with us. And I'm going to be conversing with them. By the way, I'm Sharmila. They just recorded my podcast some time ago. And it's an honor. It's a wonderful opportunity to be talking to them about the unseen or the unheard stories of how, why of Project Nomad. So, my first question is to Saurav Datta, who is the mind, heart behind this project, as to what inspired you to start Project Nomad and how did you find amazing people like Abhilasha and Harshad to join you in this journey?
So, first of all, it feels, a little strange to talk about us on our own platform, but it's amazing to share because we haven't shared our story with the people, but we kind of do social media posts regularly to talk about our mission and vision on Project Nomad. So, coming to your question, I think it was 2019, early 2019, when I was exploring homeschooling, to be specific, for my own child. And Harshad connected with me through some group, and we had a long chat on the first day. And somehow we felt that there is a common connection between both of us. We are looking for a common goal. And can we do something? Can we create something out of this curious mind? So then the exploration happened in a way that I was organizing a small homeschooling meetup in Bandra in Bombay. And he said, I will be coming by and let's have a chat. Let's see how our energy flows together for a few days. And then again, I came to Pune as well, just to understand what he is doing. And in that course of time, I came across few more friends who were working with Harshad already, and from there, Abhilasha was another person, and we had a brief meeting. We are planning to do something. Can we have a vision? So one evening we were sitting together, and I was just talking loud. I have the idea of making films. I can tell stories. So let's take storytelling as a format, and let's see how we can collect stories and tell them to whomever possible. So in that way, in a very rough idea, we started Project Nomad. I think by that time the name was also not there. We were looking for a name, but deep in our heart, I think the idea was same. We have to tell the stories through which we will go. If I come across a parent, or if I come across someone who is doing some kind of a work in education, I will grab the story and then I will put it forward. So that was the initial idea, and that is how it's all started.
Wow. So interesting to know that homeschooling is the field that brought you all together, and your exploration about homeschooling for your own children. Because I know Harshad and I know you. I know you all both have 5 and 6-year-old children, boys, and who both don't go to school. So it's interesting to see how the two of you have come together to create something so beautiful. So now I would like to know from Abhilasha as to what inspired you to be part of Project Nomad.
First of all, I would like to thank Sharmila ji to give us an opportunity to talk about our journey. on our same channel. It is a bit strange, but yeah, I would like to express my views on it. So it was in 2018 when I completed my master's, and I was on a journey of exploring like how can I express my views about my subject to the people around. And it was in the same period where my brother was struggling with his academics. He was in his ninth class, and he was struggling with his academics. And I used to every time be in the school with him. My attendance was even more than him. It was for the sake that he's not studying, he's not wearing the proper uniform, he's not coming on time. So our entire family was fed up with the same thing, that we are going to the school and having the same conversations again and again. And that is when something was going on in my mind, that I was from the same school but did not get the same treatment, and my brother is suffering from something else, the same place but some experiences are different. So it made me think that yeah, now it is a time that I need to think of something for him, to come up with some solution for him. And then in that search, I came across Harshad and his work, wherein I got inspired by the way he was interacting with the kids and the way he was trying to find solutions for students who are weak in their academics. And somewhere I got connected with it, and I was also helping out some kids, but it was on a one-to-one level. It was not on a grand level. And in those days, I came across Harshad and Saurav with a idea where we were thinking of where they were also thinking on the same topics or on the same problems, where we were trying to find solutions. And that is how I connected with them, and we our thought process was matching, and we started off.
Wow, that's so interesting. And just to know that your brother is the one who's actually inspired you to be part of a venture like this and to explore questions around education and learning is amazing. Thank you, Abhilasha. And now I would like to know from Harshad, because he is the common feature amidst Saurav and Abhilasha who's brought the group together. So, Harshad, what's the story behind you? Why did you decide to be part of Project Nomad?
So, having done the Teach for India fellowship in 2015 to 17, and having studied in the same school, Abhilasha and me, Abhilasha was my junior and I was her senior. We were like 2 years, different in the journey of our school, and the journey in the school was very different because our school was very different at that times, and it was a progressive school where we were exposed to a lot of things other than education. So I would like to mention one of my mentor here is Jitendra Singh sir, who has inspired me through his vision and work that he has done in a place like Bhosri, because Bhosri as a town has its own challenges. And then through Teach for India, I worked in a government school which was just 500 meters from the private school where I studied myself. So these were two polarities that were grappling around. That is one school with infrastructure and parents paying, and the other school where there was education was free but 100 children in a classroom. So these were two different polarities, and that made me thinking. And then Teach for India made me explore a lot of things in education. And then I got married, so I started exploring that what kind of education I would want to give to my child, because I knew that the schooling system was going to have more transformation in next 5 years. So for me, working in education, I realized that education must be more collaborative and more open to what it was not the way it is, because the percentage of youth contributing to education still in our country is very minimum. And just this thought of, if people start working in education at a young age, they can make a huge difference, because by the time we started Project Nomad, I had already connected with you. I had connected with so many people who were into alternative education, and I could find that there was no common thread between all these people. All these people were creating a model which was limited to certain people around them, and I could see that there was a lot of overlap of information. Like, many people had common sharing of things, but there was not one single thread that could bring everyone on the same platform. So that led me to a confusion that we have technology as a tool today and how we can use that. And I was very open in my thoughts, because whenever we hired teachers for my coaching institute, or when I started my coaching institute after 2017, so we hired teachers who connected with the mindset, and we did not see any resumes or something, but we saw the mindset and the commitment of the teacher. And uh, after Teach for India, I also did Jagriti Yatra, wherein I could connect with 80 strangers and I could talk if the person was interested for long hours. And that is how I connected with Saurav. And the same day, as you mentioned earlier, we spoke till 4 in the morning, and very inspired, and both of us shared a very strong energy. And then that made me so he had already made Homeschooling India group by then, and he had been a pioneer in building that Facebook group. And here by now I had made a Pune WhatsApp group of Pune homeschoolers or Pune alternative educators. And then Abhilasha also joined as a teacher, because she did not join as a teacher first, she joined as a parent first. And then over a period of time after working, she became a teacher with the experiences and the ideology we followed at working with these children who had certain struggles in their academic lives. Uh, yeah, and that's how one fine night we decided ki let's start documenting everyone's work, because everyone's story is so unique, yet so same. So then was the idea that we started brainstorming on what subjects to cover, what stories to make. And we said कि let's see, यानी किधर से क्या पैसे आएंगे या क्या होगा. And yeah, that was the start.
Yeah. So, if I have to ask you guys if, to define or to tell me about what is Project Nomad, so what would you say? What is Project Nomad to you, and what is Project Nomad to the entire world?
We did not have any idea what Project Nomad would be. When we started documenting stories, we understood that how powerful the stories are connecting out and how people are responding to it. So for the first 2-3 months, we were just figuring out that what to do and how to start. We met for 2-3 days. We spent 2-3 days together. Like now also, when we are doing this podcast, we are 3 days together. So we are building a vision of next 5 years now, because when we met last time in 2019, it was again for 2-3 days where Saurav had come, and then we designed that we will start documenting stories of alternative education. We covered a few conventional schools also which had some alternative mindset. So we did not limit ourselves कि ये गलत है ये सही है. We started doing it, and that is what I believe has been the story since then. Because when we started listening to these people, something in us started getting the food, and we started exploring these stories more deeply, more passionately, and more in depth. And we then selected few stories and we started working on them. We documented. Luckily we got very good people on the way, and who helped us, who guided us, who mentored us. And first of all, the people were very happy that someone is so honestly going to document them, because many a times they were documented, what they had to say was just a part, and rest of the edited versions came out which were more appealing to the market. But we decided that we will not play with the content that is coming out, so we will keep it as honest. So that became one of our values, that whatever content is going to come, we will flow in that content. We will not play around with it. So that was one of our values and starting block of Project Nomad.
To add to Harshad, I think initially we were looking at, because I was exploring homeschooling, we were looking at uh, collecting stories in and around homeschooling. And then we took some time to list out, what are there under the alternative tree, And then we went to the internet, we did our research, कि कौन से नाम आते हैं, and there were few names, but there were no particular place from where we can gather maximum knowledge. So then we got the idea कि okay, chalo, homeschooling is not the only thing that we can capture. There are a lot of things happening also. And we are also sure that we have to keep our baggage, our conditionings aside. Because I was coming from a mainstream filmmaking Bombay industry where we were making stories and films with a purpose. And here, if we go with a purpose, I think we can dilute the theme or the true story जिनको हम cover करने जा रहे हैं. So as he said, initially there was no such plan. It was only to explore and find out how we can document. Because to document, we need cameras. We need some kind of gears. So initially we had nothing. It was only कि चलो लोगों से बात करते हैं, information gather करते हैं, and then we will find out कि कैसे इस चीज़ को आगे लेके जाएं. And then so slowly we put up some funds together. हमें initially हमें एक कैमरा चाहिए होगा छोटा सा. We need to have a laptop to edit those films. So can we come together and put up some funds from our own pocket? And then we will ask for help for rest of the things, and then we'll keep on traveling and explore, and then we'll make films. So in that way, initially it was started. And as you asked, what is Project Nomad? So initially it was the idea of collecting alternative stories, alternative education stories. But slowly then we understood that, education is not only about a learning space or someone who is in a journey of exploring different forms of education. It's all about life and how life in itself is a learning journey. So then we devised a thought that, okay, let's see this in a way that we are trying to document in a way like a evidence, a visual evidence where we can document a time period within which there is some kind of experiment is happening. And if we can archive that for other parents for the future, it might help them in a way. So right now, it is what we are doing a kind of a evidence-based video documentation of education.
So the next question that comes to my mind is, which was the first film that you made? And whose journey did you capture? What was the educational approach or the philosophy behind that story?
We bought the GoPro camera, and we had a chat with one of my friend, Pratik, who had his own camera. So a GoPro is a particular type of a camera which is made for action, movement. But to capture life closely, we need a specific camera, specific lens. And to create good visuals, we need different kind of lenses. So I asked him that, would you like to volunteer for a story? And he readily agreed. And we invested in a GoPro camera and a small laptop to shoot and edit. And then we made a long list of all the possible stories that we can capture. And I was in Bombay, and I'm still in Bombay. And then we decided which story is closest to us, as in to travel to them. So we found there is a school in Karjat, Maharashtra, and they are working on inclusive education. And the name of the school is Samaveshi Pathshala. I connected with Ashok, who is the co-founder of that school. And he was very happy because they were really struggling at that time. And there was no coverage on them. He was writing blogs, he was writing on social media, and he was very happy that someone wants to make a story on them. So he readily agreed, and I traveled with my friend Pratik with his camera and our small gadgets, and we documented their school. It's in a village called Kashele in Karjat, and they are on a rented place where they're working with special children, children with special need, and also, uh, I mean, children with disability and non-disabled children. And they have maintained a very good uh, ratio of how to balance both the children. And because they are coming from a background of TIS, where especially Ashok's wife Nivedita has done some kind of a education in that disability sector, she was very well aware of what they were doing. But the story um, which which took them in this journey of starting a school was amazing, and it was very heart touching. So when I connected with Ashok, he shared. I asked him what is the story behind starting this school. So he shared a blog where he has written in great detail regarding. They are from Nepal, and in that blog he wrote the story of 2015 earthquake that happened in Nepal, and how he came across a small school which was totally uh, into pieces, but still the children were learning in a small shelter with a tarpaulin shelter, and there was so much of energy in that school. But when he went forward, he saw a little girl on a wheelchair, and that little girl was looking at that tarpaulin school, the temporary school. And somehow Ashok felt curious, and he asked, why you are sitting here? What happened? You don't go to school? So that girl said, I used to go to that school, which is no more. But then Ashok said, but the school is still running. And then the girl said, I cannot go to the school because I am on a wheelchair. And that sentence really struck him very hard. He said, I was unable to sleep because I understood that that little girl wants to go to a school, but because she went through an accident, she is unable to go to the school. And this can happen to anyone. So what can we do to solve this issue? How can we help that girl child? So they went on a research. They decided that they will quit their own job, whatever they were doing, and they want to start a school, an inclusive school. So that story really is very touching, very inspiring. So that is how I came across the story of Samaveshi Pathshala, and we went and we documented the story in a day's time. But while documenting, I also understood, because that was a kind of my first non-fiction story that I was handling. And I understood that one day time was very less to document such kind of a work. And normally what happens in fiction, once you are done with your story, it is done. But I thought that in our case, it can't be the same. It's not only about the story, but also the human connection that we are making. And we cannot just come back and forget the people who are doing that kind of work. So then slowly after that, when we started to get involved with more stories, I made sure I will stay with them for some time. With the mindset, let me understand the vibe, the energy, the hard work that they're doing. And during the story, he used to say, we travel by bus for 1.5 hours. But they just said, I never felt that. So to feel that, I need to travel with them in the same bus. And they were having a small child, their own son, studying in that same school. So they wake up early in the morning, they do their breakfast, they prepare their own food for the lunch. They come with their own child, small child, to the school. They spend the entire day. They again go back. Nivedita prepares the entire curriculum. Ashok looks after the funding, how to run the school. All these struggle are so inspiring. But I was half, through the story. I was unable to bring the story in full-fledged way. So then those small learning gave me more inspiration, how I can design the process of making the films. and what should be the basis or the foundation of our content creation. So that's how we did our first story actually.
I have met Ashok and I have heard a lot about him, about the work that he's doing at Samaveshi Pathshala. So I can understand and see. And it's really nice to see that you have covered. Your first story was of an initiative so humble and so pure in nature. I would my next question would be around first story led to the next, to the next, to the next. And you'll have covered many stories. And now you'll have come up with this idea of podcast. So, which is a different formula from recording live videos and covering covering stories through videos. So, how did this new approach come from, and what is it that you are aiming to achieve through this podcast series?
So in 2019 we traveled a lot, but after the COVID I felt key because we call for volunteers to help us in filmmaking. Somehow they got busy with their own life, and somehow we are not getting volunteers for our work. And also on the other hand, I can see that a huge amount of video was getting created, and somehow we are reaching to a saturation point where the retention time is getting lower and lower. And also during the COVID time, podcast also became very popular. People used to do a lot of interviews through Zoom call, through different video conference platforms. So somehow the idea was already there in me, at some point of time I have to try podcasting. And it took some time, but then I floated the idea ki, can we try to do some audio podcast? It's a different format, and audio can be also a very immersive way of carrying the story forward. But yes, we have to be very careful with the quality of the audio, because the listener must not feel pain at the ear while listening to the audio or the podcast. So I did a little research ki how to carry out a good quality podcast, what are the gears that we need, and then I found out that we need to buy some gears for that. And as always, we asked for help. We decided that we need a fund to get all those gears, and then we came to the social media and we asked for help, and we got help in a way that whatever we are asking, we got more. So we went and we bought the gears, and that's how we started the Nomad Podcast thing. And the idea is, again, without any intention, it's just kind of an experiment. Ki we have been making video films, why don't we try a different medium? So, and it is also easier as compared to a video production. But I was also sure that I have to carry a few things with me wherever I go for the podcast, and that was okay. So I have been traveling with the heavy metals, the laptop, the cables, the microphones, and all the things along with me wherever I go. And if there is a possibility, and if there is someone who is interested in the podcast, I record the podcast at their place, or we find a common place to do that. So the theme is same. We are documenting individuals' stories in and around education, but in a different format.
So it is often said that when you listen to stories, you get influenced and it shapes your perspectives in life. I would love to hear from each one of you how these videos, the podcasts, and all the coverage that you all have done on Project Nomad have changed your own lives?
So as I already spoke about it, that whatever people we met, we had a lot of differences and similarities at certain points of time, and we we had already become parents by that time. My son was 1 year old when we started Project Nomad, and I was kind of thinking that in which school shall I put him? Shall I put him in the same school where I studied? Shall I put him in school, or shall I let him decide that which school he wants to go, and wait patiently for him whether he wants to do homeschooling, unschooling? Because as and when we connected with every story, we understood that everyone is doing so much of work in education, and there are so many perspectives. Like, there is no only one fixed rigid way to get educated, and with every story our vision has become broad. We are more open uh, to understanding new perspectives in education. uh, we have explored so many pedagogies. We have taken so many positives from different pedagogies across, from Montessori to now Waldorf, and uh, philosophy of Arvindo, Gandhiji, philosophy of Swami Vivekananda, and we saw that these people have inspired the people who are already working on the ground in many of the ways. Uh, so with each story there was always a personal connect, that we could relate to the personal story of the speaker who is speaking, or the school which we are documenting. And we also went into the past and documented a school which was run by a foreigner in our country, and the children could speak 6 languages in that school, and the keys of the school were in the hands of the children. So this kind of freedom in education, and then many homeschooling parents, unschooling parents giving a lot of freedom to their children, and children taking charge of their life, was a new thing for me, because we have been brought up in a system where the adults decide for the child what is to be done. But these stories that brought in more sensitivity into us, brought uh, more inspiration to us, that so much of work is going on, it needs to be just brought out to the world, that so much work is happening around. So yeah, that is it, how we could learn from these stories.
So as I already said, I was in. I had a problem in front of me. That was my brother is struggling with his academics, and I need to get out of this. But I was not getting a solution. So I thought of exploring. Already, I was in the exploring journey where I was finding some solutions to at least get my brother out from that academics thing, and he would do something else in his life ahead. Wherein we met, and I think that became an experimental ground for me, wherein there were numerous experiences coming up. Like one of the story that we covered in Bihar, a small village named as Chapna in Bihar, wherein I saw that not only the students were getting some exposures, but also the teacher who were teaching them were also learning a lot. So one thing that I saw there is like, yeah, not educate learning journey is not only when we are small, it is a lifelong journey. So that was one insight that I got when I was on the floor or on the grounds during the process. So this was one experience. I would like to share one more thing, that is in my 2018 I was doing my masters, and a group of 8 people were sitting together, we as friends, and we used to always discuss like, yeah, we are doing our physics, but some of our friends were getting married, some were having kids already, some were married and had kids and were doing their masters. So then we were thinking like, yeah, हम जिस चीज़ से जा रहे थे, हमें जो सवाल आ रहे हैं कि we used to ask curious questions to our teachers, and sometimes we would not get answers. It was not that they were not trying to deliver something, but yeah, we were not getting the desired or required solutions for our questions. And therein we used to have some funny discussions कि like हाँ तू business में अच्छा है ना तो मेरा बेटा तेरे पास आएगा, तू fitness के लिए अच्छा है ना तो मैं कहीं और नहीं तेरे पास भेजूंगा. So I think that I was like connecting the dots. Here in Project Nomad, I was getting the answers of my questions, and my energy was like getting some sort of flow, and that flow was in the right direction. This is what I started feeling once I started working, and once I was on the ground with people who are already getting solutions. Wherein I was just seeing that हाँ मेरे पास मेरा प्रॉब्लम बहुत बड़ा है और मेरा भाई कैसे कवर कर पाएगा अपने एकेडमिक्स से. बट आई थॉट कि नहीं, ओके, आई वॉज ट्राइंग टू फाइंड वन सोल्यूशन बट आई वॉज गोइंग रिवर्स बैक कि हाँ ही इज़ इन नाइन्थ, बट वॉट अबाउट द स्टूडेंट्स हु आर suffering, or I would not say suffering, who are like trying to evolve from their young ages. So this is what I felt, and yeah, still it is a exploring and unlearning journey going on.
So for me, I have been making stories for over 15 years now, different formats. But while working in the film industry, one gentleman with whom I used to discuss all my issues, all my learnings, he suggested me कि you have been dealing with fiction stories for last 5-6 years. Why don't you try non-fiction? So I asked, what is there in non-fiction? It's like journalism, you know. So he said, no, it's beyond that, and you have to experience that. And normally what happens in India in filmmaking, when one go for the filmmaking course, they start with fiction actually. But in other countries, they start with non-fiction, because that's where all the stories come from. But in India, it's totally reverse. So he said that I have been to a lot of film school, and this is something which I want to tell you. Go and try non-fiction. Go and see the stories in real life. So that was in my back in my mind कि I need to try non-fiction. And then when we started to document stories for Project Nomad, what I was seeing was real emotions coming out from their heart. And those emotions are so pure in their energy that it was directly hitting me very strong as a storyteller. The visuals that they were saying, it was in front of me like a replay. The struggle that they were talking about, I was having goosebumps to hear those things. But I can rewrite those things as a fiction, but that's not going to be that powerful. But somehow when the person who has gone through those stories in real, when they are being retold, it's more powerful. And then comes the other part, how that has affected me, because I learned a lot during 2019 and initial 2020 before the lockdown, and it has changed all my perspectives, from learning, from food habits, from what kind of a fabric you need to wear, what kind of a color needs to be on the fabric, why soil is important, why rain is important, why you need to interact with people, why discussion is important. All those things has come into my life in such a way, it has impacted me very deeply. And me and my cameraman, we have gone through different emotions during the filmmaking process. I mentioned everyone that during the making of David and his Neilbag film, my cameraman who normally wears the headphone to keep a watch on the audio, I often find him crying after the shot. Because the story that I also listen, but I listen directly, but he listens very closely because he is wearing the headphone. He can feel the breath. He can feel the emotion, अगर थोड़ा सा भी उसके अंदर रोना आ रहा है तो he can feel that. I cannot, because he is listening amplified sound through the headphone, but I cannot. So I can hear his snobbing कि ऐसा आवाज मैं जब देखता हूँ क्या हुआ सर, this is very powerful, but powerful क्या, but he cannot explain. So during the making, we understand that these stories are going to touch a lot of heart. And that's what we wanted. So overall, I would say that recently also I was talking to a gentleman, to a person who is very well known in the field of poetry and writing, Padma Shri Rajesh Joshi ji from Bhopal. And he said, our country, and at that time, the debate on the TV was going on about the naming of the country, whether it's going to be Bharat or India. So he said, what should be the name of our country? He said, it has to be Katha Desh, a country which has moved forward only through kathas. And we don't know the power of kathas. So naturally, coming to the point, it has, to some extent, has given me a lot of learning. And most importantly, it has changed me a lot. So that's the thing.
That's amazing. I would love to know how doing these stories has changed the way you parent your children.
I was having this opinion that I won't send my child to a school from even before Project Nomad, because I was already exploring different forms of alternative education even before we started Project Nomad. And the impact of the films or the impact of the work that we do on Project Nomad has made me help my wife understand, that learning can happen through different ways also. Because at the initial stage, I was looking for alternative options, but my wife was very confirmed that my child should go to the school. That's the right place for him. But then when I used to come back from different places and I used to tell her different stories that I was covering, she used to think on that. And I can see that a lot has changed just by listening to the stories. And today and 2 or 3 years back, there is a huge difference between what I used to understand and what my wife used to understand, and now what I understand and what my wife is understanding. So that's a big impact. मुझे अलग से समझाना नहीं पड़ा कि क्यों मैं कुछ और कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. Extra efforts लेने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ी. So that is one thing. And because later on, I found that my child is also the autism spectrum. This thing has helped me a lot to understand that, if your child has some kind of a difficulty, there are so many ways to find solutions. And for example, my child has a delayed speech. So initially we were looking for speech therapy. But right now I have understood that speaking is one of the way of communication. There can be more ways of communication, and we have to look into those possibilities. Maybe my child is good with sign language. Maybe my child is good with visual communication. But I was having no idea of all those things. So once I started exploring all these forms of stories, then I understood कि okay, सिर्फ एक कोई प्रॉब्लम का एक सोल्यूशन नहीं हो सकता, काफ़ी सारे सॉल्यूशंस हो सकते हैं. So in that way, a lot of learning, absolutely.
Really interesting to hear how it has changed you as well as your wife, and the way you approach your child, and something which would have been a huge problem earlier is now just part of life. So that's really interesting. I would love to hear from Harshad and Abhilasha too.
So there are a lot of similarities between Saurav's story and my story. So my wife was also to a polarity of conventional schooling, and I was very sure that I might not put my child into a conventional school, because through Teach for India fellowship, we explored a lot of alternative schools in 2015, 16 and 17, 18. Then after meeting Saurav, we discussed a lot of things, a lot of new exposures came out. And my wife also has been a teacher, and she has been into education, and she was teaching dance before we got married. And then now recently 2 years she is into educating children now. It is not that she has given up her dance now, but now as we are educating our own child, we have transformed the whole family environment, where we are talking about education and health and life as an integrated approaches of one another. We know how taxing uh, conventional schooling can be at times, where a child is going through a lot of subjects in one day's time. And uh, and now, by understanding that why children should work with hands at a certain age, why children should work, or we should work on their hearts at a certain age, and when we need to be parent with them, when we need to be kind of friend with them, these all boundaries are now very well defined. And the learning environment of home, where now I have my like Akshay, my son, has his grandparents. Nikita's mother is also there to support. So the child has become very social, and the child has a different perspective to world. That is what I can see, because the environment that we have given is, uh, we changed ourselves through these stories, and these stories have lived with us for 4 years now, 5 years now. And every story kind of changes something little by little every day in bits and pieces. And then over a period of time, after 1 year, you realize that something huge has changed. And that is what happened with my wife, slowly giving her slow doses homeopathy of alternative education. Slowly it has, seeped into our whole family. And then my parents as well, uh, who have heard and have changed certain ways in which they brought me up. So this radical thought of not sending a child to school itself is not digestible to a lot of people around where I come from. Like, staying some few kilometers away from city is a total different ball game, where the exposure of all these experiments is not that huge. But I believe that yes, it has helped in a different ways, and the parenting styles have kind of become more synergistic with the child, about the child's likes, and supporting him in a better manner to understand him. That is what Project Nomad has helped me to do with my wife and my child as well. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely my approach towards dealing with children and also with the adults have changed a lot since 2018, I would say. Because in 2018 I was going through a phase where I was in figuring out and finding out solutions for the academics of my brother. Therein I was facing a lot of challenges, uh, and I used to get frustrated, I used to get angry, I used to not understand how to deal with the situation. And now when I see myself today, even if there is some problem coming up, my response to those problems are entirely changed. Like, it is a 360-degree shift in me. And I think Project Nomad is like an ongoing journey for me. Every day there is some new solution coming up. Every day there is some new absorption that is there taking place in me. And yeah, I was teaching since 2018. Slowly, as I look back, I can see that year by year, my approach towards kids have changed. I have softened a lot, I would say. And yeah, I always initially I used to think कि बच्चा पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहा है तो उसका मतलब कुछ तो प्रॉब्लम है, उसको समझ नहीं आ रहा है, ये नहीं हो रहा है. So it was like superficial. Now I try to go into the depths and understand what is his pattern, why is he doing why is he behaving in this way, what can be done in a way to understand. his face and then respond rather than just judging. So the parameter of judging is completely gone, and also comparison has been completely vanished, I would say. So when I look at me, it is a complete shift. And yeah, I'm loving it, and everything has changed. Everything has changed.
I think I have one last question to the entire team. Where do you see Project Nomad probably 5 years down the line?
These vision questions are very tough to answer because then you become accountable to the vision. And yeah, that's what the destiny wants us to be. And I believe that whatever happens in next 5 years, we three will plan it out and bring it out, execute. That is the first vision that we three envision. The second goal for next 5 years is creating a junior team under us, which has a subset from age group of, I would say, 15 years to 25 years. And then after every 5 years, having again a set of 15 to 25 in that team. We are currently only focused into audio and visuals. We wish to step into now educational consultancy, where we wish to support conventional and alternative schools to become the best version of themselves if they require. Because the future ahead is becoming very open and is changing rapidly. And education in our country holds a lot of promise. So this vision building, we did this lot of exercise in Teach for India. So wherein we stick to the values. So the core values of Project Nomad will remain same, but the work will start with different age groups and in education as well, where we work more with conventional schools as well.
So, to add to what Harshad just said, as a filmmaker, I can say that few things that I have discovered in last few years with filmmaking. One is that filmmaking is a wonderful tool to learn, using which we can learn a lot of skills. This idea is not clear in the Indian mindset, but it is being used in different countries. How we can use filmmaking as a tool to learn communication. Because to convey what I have in my mind to the person with whom I will do an interview is very important. I have to convince, I have to translate my thoughts, and then I have to take his thought on camera. Also, there are a lot of other skills like understanding light, understanding color, understanding human behavior, understanding how the person is comfortable or not comfortable in front of the camera, how I can take the story forward. There are so many skills. So, filmmaking as a tool can be a wonderful learning device. Secondly, filmmaking can be used as a wonderful device to document education, what we are doing in Project Nomad. So whatever experiments, whatever individual person is doing at their own pace, at their own place, filmmaking can be a wonderful tool to document their work. And then different kind of work can be done on that documentation. Filmmaking can also be used for teachers to document their work. Like, for example, there is a wonderful story that came out from United States where a teacher saw that whenever he used to ask a question, everyone in the class will raise a hand. Who wants to answer? And then he saw that, okay, there are a few students who never raise their hands. So they are underconfident. There are few students who always knew that there are students who will always raise the hand and they don't need to raise the hand. So there are all these sections of students. So how to encourage everyone? So he devised, you don't have to raise your hands. You just bring your hand, your you just bring your hand close to your heart and just raise your thumb. In that way, the entire class won't be able to see who is willing to answer. And that process, that teacher recorded somehow. And it went viral. So a lot of schools pick it up. And similarly, even in India, there are few documentation which really helped other teachers to take up new ways of learning. So as a tool, we can use it. And as an overall vision, as he said, we can also do different kind of consultancy. And I recently got a idea from the Montessori teachers training school that why don't you design a workshop with teachers where you can help them understand how they can use their simple mobile phone to take pictures of things which they want to convey in a different way. So a lot of ideas are coming and we can implement in future. So this is another thing from the perspective of filmmaking or a filmmaker. I can say that in future, Project Nomad will be definitely doing all these things.
Yeah, so I would like to add upon, or I would like to focus on some other part of it, where I feel that now we can see that we are going on and we are experiencing the stories. We are touching, or our hearts are getting transformed. In the similar way, one idea came to our mind is like we can have conversations with the people who are interested in having, who are interested in knowing alternative lifestyles and education. So what idea we have in our minds is that we would have such type of interactions every month, wherein there would be a lot of brainstorming, a lot of ideas coming up, a lot of interactions taking place, and a strong community can be built, wherein we can also some interest would come up and new ideas would come up from the people around, which would help us also to work on some other different forms of ideas coming up. So
Say, for example, the podcast that we are doing yesterday when we had the podcast, we while going back, we was thinking that from next time when we'll do some podcast, we'll invite people. Let's make it more open. Why only one person will ask question? There can be so many questions. The voice can be one person voice who will communicate with the interviewee, but there can be so many questions. So from next time we'll have a gathering where we'll do an open podcast with everyone.
So one of the questions you just answered, which was right now we are doing sessions one-on-one. Why not make it in a broadcast mode, right? And for each session, this one you did with Sharmila, with me or with other people, let others also participate as a listener and let them also ask questions. That way it will widen the scope of coverage and also widen the knowledge that is transferred through that. My second question, so the first question is answered. Second question is, being a scientist, I feel children should be exposed to creativity, okay, and things that are going to be the future, that may not be the future already. And an example that I give here is artificial intelligence. It is coming up in a big way, and I think our children need to be exposed to it. Also, it is a move away from rote learning and exposing them to knowledge which is already there and helping them focus on knowledge which is not there. While today, most of the kids are exposed to stuff that is already there, but not known that it is there. So how do we balance it out, correct? It should not be just technology. And that is why I use the term holistic learning. So how do we put this in the picture of holistic learning?
So I think filmmakers have a great potential to do a kind of a reverse engineering by seeing the future or imagining the future, that future can be this. I can reverse engineer, I can create a story, I can inspire people, and they can follow that and they can achieve something. For example, last day you gave example of Elon Musk. All his ideas came from the comics books. I know. So going to Mars is something, a wild idea, maybe a impossible thing 60 years back. But right now it looks like possible. So I think filmmakers, in a way, they can take up this responsibility to create visuals or stories through which they can inspire a generation to what all are the possibilities in the future and how we can go towards that. I think this is a great responsibility as a filmmaker, storyteller, that they can take up.
One more question is, I think I did bring up the subject, and which is, instead of our children being put into the role of job seekers, how can we bring them into the role of job creators? How does the exposure that you have had through Project Nomad help in that endeavor?
I think again, the process that we follow in Project Nomad, like exploration, experiencing different lifestyle, different possibilities, different struggle, different challenges. I think this process will open up a huge possibility कि हम और क्या कर सकते हैं, you know, issues क्या है, उस पे लोग कैसे deal कर रहे हैं, how they are finding solutions, how many times they are failing and then still they are trying and then finding a solution. Maybe a person has spent his entire life to find a solution, but still he is struggling. So that inspiration कि कोशिश करते रहना है. I think that spirit will help us find a lot of solution to a lot of problems. And as you said, कि once a child understand that there are so many problems and he can be a problem solver, he definitely needs a team. And there comes all the other possibilities: creating employment, creating team, creating economic support. There are so many support that can generate out of that, just a problem solving attitude.
You must have interviewed or had podcasts, how many, about 20, 30, right? Is there one or a few common patterns that are emerging out of these discussions that you have?
I think that's a tough one, but yes, I often see challenges which are very common. Challenges which are connected with the society, and those are not their internal challenges, but these are external challenges. And because they are external and they are coming from the society, they are often similar challenges. For example, the challenge of upscaling an idea. I often see that people have wonderful ideas, but somehow they struggle to upscale their idea. And if they upscale the idea, at certain point, they struggle to find support. And experiments have stopped at a point because there were no support. So this is one. Another is common aspect is, I think, the spirit of keep on trying is very common. They never say that, I have failed and there is no other way to go forward. They will try and find a solution. So that spirit is very common. Other than that, I think because we are covering a lot of transformation in humans' life, we see that majorly when people get into parenthood, when they become parents, a huge transformation happens. The understanding changes, the entire perspective or seeing at the world, how they look at the world changes. So that frame, that particular time period is very common in a lot of people. When they become parent, things changes.
So, whenever we work for Project Nomad, when we are in Pune, we travel in the same car. So, today in the morning itself, we were having this conversation that what is the common thread in yesterday's podcast that we did, or which story was more challenging or which story was more complex to be brought out, and did we reach to the depths of it, did we do justice to the speaker. So this introspection is always there in us as well, and this introspection is there with all the speakers that we have spoken to. They are always in the mode of self analysis. Is my work making a difference in the society? Because that is what matters. This is the first and most important thing, is that whatever people we have met them with a purpose. The purpose is very clear, that what they are working on. The second thing we find a lot of common ground with them is joy and learning go hand in hand. So the joy, whether you're unschooling, homeschooling, or going in a conventional school, we also remember a lot of things which were joyful in our school rather than what theorems or what we learned. So most of the speakers we have interacted with have suggested that the joy of learning has to be there in the process. The other thing that connects with us is learning by doing, where yesterday also when we were listening to you, and there's no fixed formula in education that this has worked for my child or this will work for his child. Every child is unique. So yesterday we also spoke on this topic of gifted, that how every child is gifted as well. So from my perspective, joy, clarity of purpose, and in the end, so giftedness of every child are the common things that these are my takeaways from whatever podcast we have made or whatever video series we have made.
I have learned from all the stories or podcasts, every problem has a solution and every solution is unique. There can be a different approach, a different if we look by different perspectives, each problem can have numerous solutions, and every person has a unique approach towards the problem handling. So also one more thing is consistency. In each story we could see that irrespective of any kind of hurdles coming up, they always had an approach of keep going is main thing, which these are the two intakes that I have taken up from.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing your views. Really appreciate.
So I know Saurav, Harshad for some time now. In fact, they were the ones who recorded my first. It wasn't a podcast, but it was a live session on their Facebook channel and a Facebook group. And that's how I became part of the Facebook group too. And I have seen them come a long way over the past few years. And I always knew that Abhilasha was part of them, but today is the first time that I've got to know her better, and I've really got to know her as a person. So far, she has always been one of the Project Nomad members. So it has been a wonderful experience talking to all three of you on the same platform and understanding how you guys tick and how you guys are together over the past few years. And what comes across to me is this need to bring to fore various stories around education. The need, that urge, that drive in you is so strong. And I think that is what inspires me also to feel, to be connected with the three of you. So it has been indeed a joy to talk to you all about your story, your journey. And I'm sure when we do this again, say after a couple of years, there'll be so much more to add to the story. So thank you. Thank you so much for accepting this idea and my proposal to interview you guys this time and be part of the podcast. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharmila. Thank you.